Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at how light impacts dynamic line of sight in Foundry VTT. So it's important to keep in mind that the way that we see the map right now as the GM, without any player token selected, is not accurate to how, one, our players see the map and how Foundry VTT kind of understands the map. Now, it looks super well lit and bright, but that's just because that's the way that it was designed in Dungeon Draft. If we actually click into one of our player tokens so we can see what they see, this is more like what Foundry sees. It's utter blackness in places where they haven't been that are outside of their line of sight, with a little bit of vision so far as their dim vision goes. But not every character has dim vision. So what does this map look like to somebody that doesn't have dim vision at all? To that end, I made Person McPerson face because humans in D&D do not have dark vision. So we're going to click into Person McPerson face, and actually so you can get an even better view, I'm going to come back to lighting, reset the fog of war, because once this character has seen X part of the map, it's still somewhat revealed when you go to another token when you're the GM. So then we'll go back to our basic controls, click on our person, and see that they're surrounded by a sea of darkness. They cannot even see their friend. They're 10 or 15 feet away from them, just everything around them. So if we want our maps to look realistic to our players that are humans that are going through them, we have to actually place light sources in the map that will provide bright and dim vision. So we're going to come down to this sixth option over here, which is lighting controls. And the first option is setting a light source. Now it says draw light source, and they kind of mean it. So we're going to click and drag, and that lets you do the radius for the bright and dim light that's emitted by light. Now a torch does 20 feet of bright light and an additional 20 feet of dim, so that's 40 feet total. So we're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So we'll say that a fireplace gives off a little bit more because it's brighter than just a single torch. It's multiple torches basically. So we'll do out to there, and then we'll leave it be. We won't change anything else. We'll come and select our player, and suddenly they can see in all of the area where the bright light has been emitted. It does not see through the walls that we've got over here or the walls back here, and same thing with Dwarfy, where they have their full dim vision, but they also have this better, more well-lit area over here from the fireplace where it's bright light. Now, there are going to be times where there's not any light in a dungeon or in a cave or something like that, and your players might say, well, I light up a torch and we start navigating that way. There is an easy way to do that. We're going to come in and we're going to get rid of this fireplace light so we don't get confused. There we go. And come back to our players, and we're going to double click on person face and bring up their token. We're going to go to their vision, even though we're not going to suddenly give them dim vision or bright vision as a way of faking light. We're actually going to give them options of emit dim and emit bright. Now, like I said, a torch is 20 feet of bright light and an additional 20 feet of dim, so we're going to say 40 feet of dim so that it encapsulates the first 20 feet of the bright light as well. And then we're going to hit update token, close, and now that we have our player selected, we see that we've got our 20 feet of bright and an additional 20 feet of dim vision. But the important thing to keep in mind is that since we are emitting this light, that means that other tokens on the map can also see this light. That means our friends and our enemies. So let's switch over to Dwarfy and see what it looks like from their point of view. They still have their full dim vision, but they also have the bright light being emitted by their friend's torch, and any enemy in the area will also have access to that information. So let's say that we've got this token. We're going to get rid of the torch entirely, hit update token, and we're going to go back to our lights and recreate our fireplace real quick, just as a demonstration, and then we're going to double click on our light icon and see that there's actually some additional configuration here that we can do as well. So we've got our light type, which is local or global. We'll look at global again in a second. Our X and Y position, which is just basically where we put the light. You don't really have to worry about that. Rotation, this will only be necessary if you change emission angle. So if instead of the light emitting in 360 degrees, if you wanted it to come just out of the front half of a covered lantern or something like that, you can drop that down to 180. Then you might want to do the rotation so that you can make sure the light is actually facing the correct direction. And then you can also set the dim radius and the bright radius, which is, as we looked at earlier, just what part of the map is going to be bright, what part is dim. You can also come in and select a light color. We'll just do this orange because that's kind of fiery. Then we have light opacity, which is just, the opacity of the light, how much it lets pass through. And then we also have this super cool option called darkness threshold. Now this basically says, turn this light on when the map reaches a certain level of darkness. Now what that means is that you can have automated versions of your daytime and your nighttime maps. So let's say that we want this fireplace to only be lit in the middle of the night. So we'll come in, we'll set it to, let's say 7. That seems like nice and dark. We'll hit update light. And if we come to our token now, we won't see anything because the darkness level isn't raised at all. But we see that we have another couple options in this light tool. We have transition to daylight and transition to darkness. Now by default, you'll be in daylight mode, which is 0 additional applied darkness. But if we click transition to darkness, we can watch as the darkness level starts to get applied to the map and we see our light start to fade in. And then the color kicks in when we get to 0.7 levels of darkness. And now our tokens will be able to see within that light. And we could have done additional torches on the outside so that the horses don't get spooked. Could have had a campfire over here by these chopped up logs and had this map be ready for a daytime or a nighttime adventure, which is super cool. Now we're going to check out that one last option in the lighting menu that we didn't look at already. So what's the difference between a local and a global light? The main difference is that local lights are impacted by line of sight. So if we take person McPerson face and we bring them outside, they cannot see because obviously there's a wall in the way. They can still see the other areas that are lit up by that fire, but the more they go directly behind it, the less they'll be able to see. And if they come over here, they're not able to see anything because there's no window there giving them any line of sight into the tavern. But let's bring them back in. They can see again. So let's take a look at what happens if we change that to be a global setting. We'll click global, hit update light, and bring, oh, sorry about that. Go back to our basic controls, bring person face outside, and they can still see. So this is good for any situation where there's a part of the map that you want your players to always be able to see, regardless of whether or not there's a wall in the way. It could be that it's something elevated. It could be that it provides some kind of X-ray through the wall so you can see into that specific spot, or pretty much anything that you can think of. It's a super cool feature, and it still can work based on the darkness level or anything like that. And so actually let's come over to the scene, and we're in the done-in inn, and we had darkness level. So when we hit that transition to darkness button, it raises the darkness level up all the way to 1. If we don't want to go for whatever reason to the transition to daylight button, we can also come in to our scene options here and set it there if you want it to, instantly be day or anything like that. But since we don't have any light sources and this is walled off on the inside, you still can't see or anything like that. But that's the basics of how lighting works in Foundry VTT, how it'll impact your dynamic line of sight, and some additional cool things that you can use it for. Next up is going to be combat and encounter tracking, I think, which should be really cool. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.